One of the biggest gaming crazes of the 2010s was the rise of the multiplayer online battle arena, better known as the MOBA. The genre incorporated teamwork, RPG progression, and a seemingly infinite skill ceiling, and distilled it into individual 40-minute sessions. In the early to mid-2010s, countless publishers saw the potential in MOBAs and tried to cash in on an increasingly popular genre. One of these publishers was Warner Bros. Entertainment, who thought that the MOBA would be the perfect place for one of the most iconic cinematic franchises. No, not that one. That's the one. DC Comics. Today, we'll be looking at a game that had all the potential to be a success, but ended up crashing and burning under the weight of high expectations and brutal mismanagement. This is Infinite Crisis. Infinite Crisis was developed by Turbine Studios between 2011 and 2015. Its goal was to emulate the success of contemporaries like League of Legends and Dota, which were two of the biggest games in the world at the time. It was also competing against up-and-coming titles like Smite and Heroes of the Storm, and even older games like Heroes of Newerth. In such a saturated market, the big question was obvious: how does one separate themselves from the pack? The answer, for most, lay in the rich DC universe. One of the big pulls of the game was being able to play as your favorite characters. When the game's open alpha was made available in July of 2013, fans were foaming at the mouth, excited to play as DC icons like Batman and Superman, Deathstroke and Nightwing. Wait, none of those characters were available on launch? This brings us to the first major issue that players had with the game, and that is the universe, or should I say multiverse, that the game took place in. Rather than sticking to the core DC timeline that most fans would be acquainted with, Infinite Crisis incorporated 6 separate timelines from the DC multiverse, as a way to increase the potential character pool that the developers could draw from. Apart from the Prime universe, which is what most people would be familiar with, they also included the steampunk-themed Gaslight universe, the post-apocalyptic Cold War Atomic universe, the magic-based Arcane universe, the ancient and monstrous Nightmare universe, and a world in which no heroes exist except those created by science, the Mecha universe. In theory, this would allow for multiple versions of a single character to be put in the game. And more characters is better, right? Unfortunately, the multiverse turned out to be one of the biggest complaints from fans and players. On top of this, when players were first able to get into the game, characters like Deathstroke and Nightwing were notoriously omitted from the roster. Batman only had multiverse variations available to play, and Superman wasn't even put into the game until a year after the closed beta started. While the multiverse characters might have been a great addition for hardcore fans, it did little for casual gamers who didn't follow the comics religiously, and would have no idea why Joker was wearing a butcher's outfit. The omission of these DC staples in favor of multiverse versions of existing characters was simply baffling. But still, while Turbine's character choices were questionable at best, Infinite Crisis still had a lot of pull due to its association with the DC universe, and that alone would keep the hype train chugging. So let's talk about the gameplay, and how Infinite Crisis aimed to separate itself from other MOBAs. Innovation is the name of the game, and right off the bat, Infinite Crisis borrowed heavily from its contemporaries. For example, the summoner spells in League of Legends, which are 2 extra abilities that any champion can select in addition to the regular kit, was retooled for Infinite Crisis. They incorporated this idea and rebranded it as Stolen Powers, introducing unique buffs that could be unlocked on a per-character basis. They also put in things like catastrophic events like meteors raining down, and destructible environments like throwable cars and breakable walls to separate themselves from the pack. But there was one thing they took from League of Legends that is, quite honestly, inexcusable. Not because it was a blatant ripoff, which it was, but because it was a blatant ripoff of something that should have never been ripped off in the first place. Those of you who played League of Legends between 2011 and 2016 will remember a not so popular game mode. It was an interesting change, which moved away from the original 3-lane MOBA map, and it played sort of like a MOBA version of domination from Call of Duty. I'm talking about Dominion. Players were amused by the new game mode, but it was never really taken seriously. Dominion was a red flag for developers that basically read, "Stay away from this game mode, it does not work." But Turbine did not heed that warning, and when Infinite Crisis entered closed beta in 2013, the only map available was a Dominion clone called Gotham Heights. That meant that many players' first taste of this brand new MOBA was a reskin of a failed game mode from another game. Those who were expecting a proper MOBA experience were certainly surprised, and right off the bat, players were uncertain about the direction that Infinite Crisis was headed. Realizing their mistake, Turbine then introduced a more traditional MOBA map called Coast City, which implemented a 2-lane design that broke away from the traditional 3-lane setup and was built around a double jungling meta that many now look back on as the best way to play Infinite Crisis. Unfortunately, when the pendulum swings, it swings all the way, and in an effort to undo the damage done by stealing Dominion, Turbine followed up their newfound success by introducing a 3-lane map called Gotham Divided. Ironically, Gotham Divided split up the player base and was ultimately what divided the community. Turbine's reasoning for introducing a third map, despite having an awesome 2-lane map? Well, that brings us to our third strike, which was Turbine's short-sighted focus on esports. Most players were attracted to Infinite Crisis not because they wanted huge tournaments or professional leagues, they simply liked the idea of playing as their favorite characters in a popular genre. By putting all their eggs into the esports basket, the game sacrificed fun for the sake of competition, which alienated many of its players. They quickly pushed the creation of a ranked ladder, resulting in a notoriously toxic competitive scene. Alright, we'll admit it. We've been hard on Turbine thus far, and while there were some questionable decisions made during development, the game's premature death can be partially attributed to its publisher, Warner Bros. With comic books, TV deals, movies, and tons of other media at their disposal, getting the word out about a new game should have been easy. They had shows like Arrow, The Flash, and Supergirl, which were all at the height of their popularity in the early to mid 2010s. Warner Bros. Had more than enough resources to simply throw money at their upcoming game. Unfortunately, most of the advertising for Infinite Crisis could only be found at gaming expos and in the back pages of comic books, meaning that most of the public didn't even know that a DC MOBA was in the works. And when Warner Bros. Saw that the game was floundering in beta, they made some cuts for the sake of strategic alignment. Massive layoffs in October of 2014 left a skeleton crew running the ship leading up to its release. When the game was finally released on March 26, 2015, 6 months after its release, on August 14, 2015, development was shut down, and the game was forever abandoned. The only way to experience this game is to watch old footage on YouTube and imagine what could have been. If only we were living in a different universe.
Defeated.